You know what's crazy? Most people spend hundreds of dollars every single spring buying new plants, digging up dead ones, and starting all over again. But what if I told you there's a smarter way? A way to plant once in May and watch your garden fill itself in, spread beautifully, and come back fuller every single year without spending another dime. So let's get straight into it. I'm counting down from 10 to 1, and trust me, you want to stay because these get more impressive as we go. Number 6 is where things get wild. And number 1 is going to completely change how you think about ground cover forever. It will outlast every plant on your neighbor's block. All right, let's get into it. Number 10, Sweet Woodruff, the vanilla-scented carpet that takes over shade. Let's talk about a plant that does something no other ground cover on this list does. Sweet Woodruff. Picture this. You're walking through a shady corner of your garden in late spring. You brush against something low growing along the ground, and suddenly the air around you smells like fresh vanilla and hay. You stop. You look down. And carpeting every inch of that dark, shady ground is this delicate, bright green mat covered in tiny, white, star-shaped flowers so pretty it looks like someone scattered them by hand. That's Sweet Woodruff. And that gardener paid $7 for it 2 years ago. When you plant it in May, the cool, moist soil under trees gives it exactly what it wants. It spreads through underground rhizomes that push quietly outward in every direction simultaneously. You won't see it happening. But by fall, that small planting will have doubled. By year 2, it will have tripled, and it never stops. Here's what makes Sweet Woodruff genuinely special. It thrives in the one condition that defeats almost every other fast spreader: deep shade. Under trees, where nothing grows, along the north wall, where grass gave up completely, in those dark corners you've been ignoring for years. Sweet Woodruff moves in and takes over completely. The bright green whorled leaves stay fresh, looking even in the deepest shade, and that vanilla scent gets stronger when the leaves dry, meaning you can cut stems and bring that fragrance indoors too. One small pot planted in May becomes a colony that fills your worst problem area for free within 2 seasons. Bonus tip: plant Sweet Woodruff under deciduous trees. It blooms in spring while the tree branches are still bare, letting sunlight through, then happily lives in full shade all summer underneath the leafy canopy. Number 9, Astilbe, the expensive-looking spreader nobody expects. Here's one that will make your garden look like you spent a fortune: Astilbe. And I want to be upfront about something. Most people hear Astilbe and think pretty but fussy, needs babying, too delicate. That reputation is completely wrong, and it has been keeping gardeners away from one of the most rewarding spreading perennials in existence. Picture a shady garden border in midsummer. Most plants are looking tired and flat. And then rising above everything else are these feathery plumes of deep red, hot pink, and pure white flowers that look like something from a luxury botanical garden. That's Astilbe doing what it does naturally. In your yard. For almost no money. Planted in May, and it establishes quickly in moist, shady soil. Each year, the clump gets wider, pushing new crowns outward through the soil, filling your border with more plumes than the year before. A single plant becomes 3. 3 becomes a dramatic, sweeping colony that looks like it was professionally designed. Here's the part most gardeners never realize. Astilbe gives you 3 seasons of beauty from one plant. Feathery plumes in summer, rich green, deeply textured foliage all season long. And then those dried plumes turning warm, russet brown and standing through fall and winter, adding structure when everything else has disappeared. It loves moist soil and shade. Those wet, shady spots that defeat every other plant are exactly where Astilbe performs best. It turns your most frustrating garden problem into your most stunning feature. One purchase this May and you are looking at decades of spreading, blooming, and multiplying completely free. Bonus tip: plant Astilbe varieties with different bloom times together. Early, mid, and late season varieties give you continuous plumes from late spring all the way through late summer from the exact same bed. Number 8, Black-Eyed Susan, the wildflower that takes over beautifully. Okay, Black-Eyed Susan. And I need you to stop thinking of this as just a pretty wildflower because it is so much more strategic than that. Yes, the golden yellow petals with that dark chocolate center are beautiful, but what most gardeners miss is how aggressively this plant wants to work for you. Black-eyed Susan spreads two ways simultaneously. It forms expanding clumps year after year, and it self-seeds prolifically. Plant a few in May, and by the second or third season, you've got a golden colony that looks like a wildflower meadow straight out of a magazine. And you did almost nothing to make it happen. Here's the timing advantage that makes this plant genuinely special. It blooms from midsummer all the way through fall. When your spring perennials have finished and your garden starts looking tired and patchy, Black-eyed Susan is just hitting its stride. Feeding bees, feeding butterflies, feeding goldfinches who land directly on the dried seed heads and eat right there in your yard. It essentially becomes a wildlife dining room in your own backyard. Full sun, poor soil, dry summers, humid summers. This plant adjusts and keeps going regardless. And if you leave the seed heads standing through winter, you get two bonuses at once. A natural bird feeder and a seed bank that sprouts new plants exactly where you need more coverage next spring. Bonus tip: deadhead about half your Black-eyed Susans through the season to extend blooming, but let the other half go to seed. That balance gives you continuous flowers and natural self-spreading without the plant taking over more than you want. Number 7. Catmint, the lavender look-alike that never stops. Here's one that honestly deserves way more attention than it gets. Catmint. Not catnip, though cats do enjoy it. Catmint is the ornamental cousin, and it is relentless in the best possible way. Soft mounds of gray-green aromatic foliage covered in tiny lavender-blue flowers from late spring almost continuously through fall. And when I say continuously, I mean you shear it back after the first big flush, which takes about 10 minutes, and then it regrows and blooms again, and then again. Most perennials give you one moment of glory. Catmint gives you the whole season. The spreading habit is gentle but consistent. It gets wider each year, filling borders and edges with that soft, billowy texture that landscape designers charge serious money to achieve. And it is practically indestructible. Drought-tolerant, happy in poor soil, and it actually thrives on a little neglect. The less you fuss over it, the better it performs. Here's the move most people miss. Plant catmint along pathways, driveway edges, or the front of a mixed border and let it spill naturally over the hardscape. That soft tumbling look over stone or pavers is one of the most beautiful effects in all of garden design, and catmint does it completely on its own without any direction from you. It also repels deer and rabbits because of that aromatic foliage. In areas where deer pressure is real, catmint is worth its weight in gold. Bonus tip: the variety Walker's Low is the gold standard. Don't be fooled by the name. It mounds beautifully to about 2 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and it is absolutely smothered in blooms all season long. Number 6. Creeping Jenny, the golden carpet. Okay, here it is. The one I promised you at the very beginning. The one that spreads so fast it will cover a completely bare patch of ground in a single growing season. Creeping Jenny. And I want to be clear about what I mean by fast. I'm not talking about you'll notice it spreading. I'm talking about you will watch this happen. You will walk past that bare patch in June and think, okay, it's filling in a little. You'll walk past in July and think, wow, that's moving. And by September, you'll have a dense, weed-suppressing carpet that looks like it's been there for 3 years. That is how fast Creeping Jenny moves in the right conditions. The golden variety, Lysimachia nummularia aurea, is particularly stunning. Those small round coin-shaped leaves in bright chartreuse yellow create an almost glowing carpet effect that lights up shady and semi-shady spots in a way that almost nothing else can. Trail it over the edge of a container, let it spill down a slope, or use it as a ground cover under shrubs where grass simply refuses to cooperate. It spreads by rooting wherever its stems touch moist soil. Give it moisture and it will run. Around pond edges, rain gardens, or those low-lying spots in the yard that stay wet after rain, Creeping Jenny is the exact answer you've been looking for. And the budget math on this one is almost ridiculous. One small pot costs almost nothing at your garden center. By fall, you'll have enough to divide and transplant to 3 or 4 other spots. By year 2, you're filling the whole yard for free. One purchase. Unlimited coverage. That's the perennial promise right there. Bonus tip. In hot climates, plant Creeping Jenny in partial shade rather than full sun. The golden color stays brighter and the plant spreads more vigorously without the stress of intense afternoon heat working against it. Quick pause here. If you're getting value from this, tap that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it genuinely helps this video reach more gardeners who need it. And drop a comment below telling me which of these you're most excited to plant. I read every single one. Number 5, Coneflower, the perennial powerhouse. Halfway through, and I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a plant that made you feel like the garden was actually working with you instead of against you? That's echinacea. That's coneflower. And once you understand what this plant does across all 4 seasons, you will never design a garden without it again. Plant coneflowers in May and they establish quickly in the warm soil, likely giving you blooms their first summer. Each year after, the clumps get bigger and the self-seeded offspring start filling in around the parent plants, creating that lush natural colony look that takes years to achieve with most other perennials. Flowers from midsummer through fall, purple, pink, white, orange, yellow, depending on the variety. Butterflies all summer, goldfinches going after the seeds in fall. And then in winter, those spiky seed heads standing up through snow like little sculptures, giving your garden structure and life when everything else has gone flat and gray. Here's something most gardeners don't realize. Coneflowers have incredibly deep taproots once established. That means exceptional drought tolerance, and they actually improve your soil structure over time. They are giving back to your garden while they grow. That is a plant pulling its full weight. And the modern variety range has expanded so dramatically that you can build an entire sophisticated border using nothing but echinacea. Mix Magnus, White Swan, and Sunrise together, and you've got purple, white, and yellow moving together all summer long. People will ask you, who designed your garden? The answer is you. And a $12 plant. Bonus tip, resist the urge to deadhead all your coneflowers. Leave at least a third of the spent blooms standing through winter. The birds need those seeds, and the dried stems add genuine structure to your landscape even under snow. Number 4, Sedum, the succulent spreader. Now, let's talk about a plant that doesn't just survive difficult conditions. It thrives in them. Sedum. Specifically the low-growing spreading varieties like Sedum spurium or dragon's blood. These are ground-hugging, succulent perennials that spread across dry, rocky, sunny spots like they were engineered for exactly that purpose. Because in a way they were. Where grass dies, where other perennials wilt and sulk and make you feel like a bad gardener, Sedum tucks in its roots and spreads happily. It forms thick mats of fleshy leaves in shades of green, burgundy, and bronze, and in late summer covers itself in clusters of tiny star-shaped flowers in pink, red, or white. May planting gives the rhizomes exactly the warm conditions they need to spread aggressively before winter. By fall, you'll have a noticeably larger mat. By year 2, it's filling your slope, rock garden, or sunny border edge beautifully and asking nothing of you in return. Sedum is also one of the easiest plants on earth to propagate. Snap off a stem, stick it in the soil, keep it barely moist for a week, and it roots. Once you have one patch, you can expand it indefinitely for free, just by taking cuttings. That's not gardening, that's multiplication. The dragon's blood variety deepens to rich burgundy in cooler fall temperatures, giving you a color change that rivals ornamental trees. From a distance, it genuinely looks like something is on fire in your garden, in the best possible way. Bonus tip, plant sedum between stepping stones or in cracks in a dry stone wall. It fills those gaps beautifully, prevents weeds from moving in, and looks completely intentional rather than accidental. Number 3, Daylily, the multiplying machine. Top 3 now. And daylilies deserve every bit of this ranking. If there is one perennial on this planet that delivers more return on investment than any other, it might just be the daylily. And here's the specific reason. They multiply aggressively, happily, and constantly without any help from you. Each plant produces offsets, smaller plants attached to the root system that grow outward every single year. One plant becomes 3, 3 becomes 9, 9 becomes a colony that fills an entire bed with 0 additional spending. Plant in May, And within 3 years, you'll have more daylilies than you know what to do with, which means you'll be the neighbor giving plants away. And there is no better feeling in gardening than that. Thousands of named varieties covering nearly every color in the spectrum. Pale yellow, deep burgundy, coral, lavender, bicolors, ruffled edges, spider forms. You can design an entire sophisticated border using nothing but daylilies, and it will look intentional and designed all summer long. Each individual flower only lasts 1 day, but each scape carries dozens of buds, and a mature clump produces scapes continuously for weeks. The show keeps going long after you'd expect it to stop. Drought tolerant once established, happy in poor soil, full sun or partial shade. They outcompete weeds by sheer density. And dividing them every 3 to 4 years actually makes them perform better and gives you free plants every single time. Bonus tip: mix early, mid, and late season daylily varieties together. With smart selection, you can have daylily blooms from June all the way through September. 4 months of color from one species. That's extraordinary value. Number 2, Russian Sage, the silver and purple dream. Here's one that will make your landscape look like it was designed by someone with serious talent: Russian Sage. And yes, before anyone comments, it's technically classified as a subshrub in some references. But in most gardens, it behaves exactly like a perennial, dying back to the ground in winter and coming back every spring with more energy than the year before, so it earns its place on this list completely. It spreads through root expansion and self-seeding. Over several seasons, a single plant becomes a graceful colony of silver stems and tiny lavender blue flowers that create the most beautiful, hazy, dreamy effect you've ever seen in a garden border. Designers call it the see-through plant because you can layer other plants behind it, and they glow through that airy cloud of purple-blue. It's one of the most sophisticated effects in perennial gardening, and it costs you almost nothing. Blooms from midsummer through fall. That long season puts it in a category of its own. When other plants are fading, Russian sage is hitting its peak, covered in that cloud of color that photographs beautifully and looks stunning from every angle and in every light. Hot, dry, sunny conditions are where it absolutely thrives. Poor soil is fine, no irrigation is fine. Rich, moist soil actually makes it flop badly. This is genuinely a plant that performs better when you ignore it. If you've ever felt like your garden is more work than joy, Russian sage is your answer. The silver stems stay beautiful through winter too. Leave them standing and you get months of structure and ghostly pale interest even when the rest of the garden is bare. Bonus tip: plant Russian sage behind lower growing coneflowers or black-eyed Susans. The contrast between that airy silver blue cloud and the solid golden yellow below it is one of the most beautiful combinations in all of perennial gardening. Screenshot that combination and take it to your garden center. Number 1, Creeping Thyme, the ground cover that does everything. And here we are, number 1. And I want to tell you exactly why Creeping Thyme sits at the top of this list before I even describe it. Because the ranking comes down to one question. Which plant does the most jobs simultaneously for the least amount of money and effort? And nothing else on this list comes close to Creeping Thyme's answer to that question. Low-growing and fast-spreading. Smells incredible when you brush against it or walk across it. Blooms in a carpet of pink and purple flowers that covers the entire plant. Survives foot traffic that would destroy most ground covers. Thrives in poor, dry soil that other plants refuse. Repels mosquitoes naturally through its aromatic oils. Attracts bees and butterflies in enormous numbers. Stays evergreen in most climates through winter. That is 8 jobs, 1 plant, 1 purchase. Plant it between pavers and it fills those gaps with fragrant, beautiful foliage that cushions every step and makes your pathway smell like a herb garden every time you walk through. Plant it on a slope and it holds soil while eliminating weeds completely. Use it as a lawn alternative in a small sunny area and suddenly you have a flowering, fragrant, almost zero maintenance green space that never needs mowing. Never needs mowing. It spreads steadily outward, rooting as it goes, and self-seeds into nearby cracks and gaps. In a few seasons, a small planting becomes a dense, mat-forming colony that looks permanent and established. May is the perfect month to plant it because the warming soil temperatures trigger fast root establishment, and you'll see spreading begin almost immediately. By midsummer, it'll be blooming and drawing every pollinator in your neighborhood to your yard. From a pure value standpoint, there is no other plant on this list that delivers this much beauty, this much function, this much ecological benefit, and this much spreading coverage for the price of one small pot at your local garden center. It earns number one every single time. Bonus tip: woolly thyme and red creeping thyme are two varieties that spread particularly fast and look stunning planted together. Let them intermingle naturally, and the result looks wild and lush and completely intentional all at once. I promised you a bonus, and here it is. And I want to frame this correctly because this isn't a nice-to-have tip. This is the thing that separates a garden that limps along for 2 years before it looks decent from a garden that explodes with growth in season 1. Soil preparation before planting. But stay with me for 30 more seconds because this changes everything. Most people dig a hole, drop a plant in, water it, and wonder why it's slow to spread. Here's what's actually happening. The plant is fighting compacted soil every single time it tries to send out a new root. It's working twice as hard for half the result. Before you put any of these perennials in the ground this May, loosen the soil 8 to 10 inches deep, not 6, 8 to 10. Then work in a 2 to 3 inch layer of compost, not fertilizer. Not synthetic plant food. Compost. Real organic matter that improves drainage, feeds the microbial life in your soil, and gives those spreading roots a loose, rich medium they can run through freely. Do this one time. One afternoon of work. And your perennials will spread in season 1 the way most plants spread in year 2 or 3. That's not an exaggeration. That's just soil science working in your favor. And after year 1, you barely touch the soil again. The perennials take over. The roots do the work. The spreading happens on its own. That's the entire point of planting smart in May. So there you have it. 10 perennials that plant once and pay you back for years. But here's what I actually want you to take away from this video. It's not the plant list. Plant lists are everywhere. What I want you to take away is the mindset shift. Every dollar you spend on a fast-spreading perennial this May is a dollar you don't spend next spring or the spring after that. You're not buying a plant. You're buying a system that grows and fills and spreads and comes back stronger every single year without asking anything from you. That's how you build a garden that actually works for your life instead of against it. If this video helped you think about your garden differently, hit that subscribe button because that's exactly what we do here every single week. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 10 you're starting with this May. I genuinely read every single one and I love knowing what you're planting out there. Now go put something in the ground. I'll see you in the next one.